You're listening to 360 Digital, a podcast brought to you by Opinion's all-in-one user feedback software. This podcast series tackles a number of different topics under the digital umbrella, from best practices in UX and CRO to the latest trends and innovations in customer experience and digital marketing. This is 360 Digital. Hi everyone, and welcome to our third episode of 360 Digital. My name is Erin Gilliam, and I'm here once again with my co-host Luke Bryce. So back in December, we launched episode number 2, which included an interview with Stephen Pavlovich, who is the founder and managing director of Conversion.com. During this episode, he gave us some great insights on how digital enterprises can set up a successful data-driven experimentation process. So for those of you who have not yet tuned in, make sure you give it a listen because we'd love to hear what you think. Today, however, we're going to focus on a more current event, which has actually been quite a popular subject lately among many digital roles. Today, we're going to talk about the state of retail.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Erin. Obviously, in the wake of the whole COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a lot of businesses all across the globe undergo quite a bit of strain. And the retail industry was really no exception. In fact, it's probably a bit of an understatement to say that the past year has been a struggle for many retailers. There's a lot of brick and mortar stores closing up shops, moving online, consumers doing a complete 360 when it comes to their behavior and their expectations. And we even saw some struggles on the logistics front for these enterprises as well. The question is really, how exactly did the transition from in-store to online affect the retail industry as a whole? What kind of learnings have come out of the pandemic, and how will organizations use these learnings for future successes?
Yeah, that's right. All great questions, Luke. In this podcast, we'll tackle all of those questions and more, and this time with the help of a true retail expert. He is the author of the international best-selling book, The End of Online Shopping, which has been published in more than 10 languages across over 20 countries. He's also the president of Ecommerce Europe, which is an association representing well over 100,000 web shops located in Brussels, and where there are also more than 25 national e-commerce associations working together on advocacy and a level playing field for e-retailers. But that's not all. He's also the founder and CEO of the Dutch e-commerce association Thuiswinkel.org. And he's also currently working on a new book about retail in a post-COVID era, which will be published somewhere in 2022. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to today's special guest, Wijnand Jongen.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Luke and Erin. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to chat with us, because there's a lot that you're busy with. But for those who don't know, are you able to tell us a little bit more, just to start off, what Ecommerce Europe does and what your role is there?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. Ecommerce Europe truly is a association of associations. So I think most European countries have a national e-commerce association representing the interest of online retail, and most of the time that's not just the pure players, but also the click and brick retailers in their country. And all these 25 associations, they have understood that they need to cooperate and work together on a European level, because as we all know, most of the legislation and the guidelines and the rules come from Brussels. So we have to to work together. We have to be very much proactive. And as we all know, also retail truly is a global game, and it is becoming more and more a global game with everything that's happening and coming towards us, both from the US, from China, from other parts of the world. And I think it's very good that that Ecommerce Europe is able to to work together on a scale that is otherwise not reachable for local retailers, for local pure players, for web shops, you name it, and also not for countries. So I think Ecommerce Europe fills in a gap there and helps to create a level playing field and do advocacy for retailers, so that the entrepreneurs truly can go about their own business without worrying too much about what's going on in the larger scheme of things.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for sharing. And well, yeah. Before we get started as well, what we always like to do with our guests is break the ice a little bit. So we actually have a quick question for you. Icebreaker.
Yes, we do. So yeah, I don't know about you, Wijnand, but I've become quite a bit obsessed with online shopping since the lockdown started.
Yeah.
I've got packages being delivered all throughout the week, and now I'm starting to have a pile of empty boxes stacked up in my shed. So it's getting a little out of hand.
Right.
So my question for you is: do you do a lot of online shopping? And if so, what was the last thing you ordered online, if you can remember?
Yeah, I sure can remember because earlier this morning I went to the front door and received a package that my wife and I ordered for our son's birthday, and it was a poster of a Johan Cruyff. And Johan Cruyff, of course, is the famous Dutch soccer player,
Yes.
and our son is really a big fan of Ajax, which is the Amsterdam team, of course, as we all know. And Cruyff was it's yeah, the famous rebel of Amsterdam, wonderful soccer player. So we want to give him a poster of Cruyff in his glory days. Unfortunately, though, the package arrived too late for his birthday, and so,
Typical.
but which my wife doesn't think is too painful, because now she has another reason to go over there and to visit him, and she will do so. I think well, tomorrow or later this weekend. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I guess we'll just go ahead and get started with our questions for you, Wijnand.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, as you know, it's been kind of a wild ride for a lot of retailers this past year, and that's not only just in store but also online. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of the impact the pandemic has had on the industry. So, what's going on with these brick and mortar stores, and how have e-commerce stores been affected?
Well, it's a good question, and what I saw last year is that stores really had a good e-commerce strategy, had a huge advantage. I think small or local businesses that really were caught off guard and left scrambling to set up a web store or to sell through their social media. Well, they did not have a wonderful period of time. Some big retailers were caught out by their not very good web store and web care. I mean, we saw terrible things happen there. When it comes to the winners, I think the true winners were probably, of course, the pure players. And then, of course, the retailers, both pure player and online retailers and brick and mortar retailers that really had a online presence that were helping us to live and to work at home. I think those were the ones that were the real winners. And of course, we should not forget the big players, the big tech players, and the platforms. They really profited immensely from the COVID era. During the second wave of the pandemic, and often that resulted in a second lockdown, I think retailers were, fortunately enough, somewhat better prepared. Um, and the ones that are still lagging behind, and that those, I mean, there's plenty of those with a bad web store. Well, I think from my point of view, they cannot say that it's all caused by the pandemic. I think, for example, here in Holland, but I think it's true for many countries in Europe, sometimes over 40, 50, 60% of small and medium enterprises are still not, don't have a web presence nor a web store that they can serve their customers with. And I think, that's just not good. But those companies selling products online and services that helped us survive in the Corona time, those companies, I think, had an exceptional good year.
And you mentioned a bad web store. What, in your opinion, what constitutes a bad web store?
Well, a bad web store is just where it's like a bad store, where if you don't have personalization, if you don't have your service, your customer service in order, if you cannot search and find what you need, if the navigation is just not up to date, I think that these are all elements that constitute a bad web store. And I think lots of small and medium enterprises, especially those who come from the high street, I think have bad web stores. They just thought, well, we need to have an online presence. Let's set up a web store. Maybe son or nephew, left or right, can create a web store because he or she is so smart online. But if you really want to have a presence online, and if you really want to help out your customers and your clients, then a little bit more is needed than just a website with opening times and some pictures taken to present to your audience.
Hmm. And you mentioned personalization, but what do you think about, for example, customer experience or user experience? Are those things that these web shops are going to need to focus on if shoppers can't go to the physical stores anymore?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think they'll have to, and they have to change more than ever. I think web shops have to offer better product information. I think there's so much possible at this point in time with photos, with size advice, and so forth. I think they need to offer better payment and the delivery options, and customers are just demanding it, huh? And they want, basically, they want everything, and they want everything quickly. They want everything fast. And I think they want it to be super personal. So more people and more people want to have things delivered in a in a super personal way. And let's be clear, everybody's is kind of fed up with the pandemic. At least I am. So shopping for lots of people is a even more comforting activity. Like the delivery this morning at my home of the present was one of the highlights of my day. Let's be true.
I hear
And
you there.
yeah, and retailers who mess up with bad customer service or delivery options that don't match what customer want, I think they'll be in trouble. Whether they're online or offline, that doesn't make any difference. And so, yeah, web shops need to offer more personalized options. And I think in the coming years, those will be the years of the hyper personalization. Understanding your customer is going to be more important than ever.
Yeah, agreed. And this is just another separate thing. This is something I saw in the news recently, I think in the Dutch news, that click and collect is becoming a really popular concept. Since we can't go into physical stores and everything, do you think that's a concept that will stick in the retail industry?
I mean, at this point in time, it's an option for some consumers. It's an option for some retailers. But I think, to be very honest, it's not a way for traditional retailers to survive the pandemic. And yes, click and collect will become one of the options, huh, in the future, huh? And as it has been before, by the way. Huh? um, Consumers, I think always can be tempted to impulse purchases that complement their click and collect order. But of course, then it also boils down that the people who are working in retail stores have to understand what's going on. And I think that's a big thing at this point in time. I think a lot of retailers have people working in their stores, and they're good people often, but they have no clue when it comes down to click and collect, that they have to understand that people who are coming into stores might be ready for cross selling, and if they do go for cross selling, they have to understand where these customers are coming from, that they know more than ever the details of every product that they want to buy. So I think there's still a lot of education needed in that sense. So I think the skills and digital skills of workers in employees in the traditional retail stores have to some work has to be done there.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that actually before with cross selling, because I've done, obviously, I think most of us have that click and collect thing. I've done that before, but I never really thought that there would be more
Yeah,
possibilities
abs-
involved.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And I have another question for you. This is kind of going back to our first question, so a little bit trend related. Recently, we came out with a white paper on the latest digital customer experience trends. And doing our research, we noticed that there was one view that's been repeated quite frequently, and that is the idea of an acceleration of existing trends. So we always talk about the same things like digital transformation or the concept of mobile first. But to what degree do you think that this is true, that these trends are, being thrusted forward because of the pandemic?
Well, I think the what we will see is that a lot of the existing trends, and you just named a few, huh, but you can also say that the way that online and offline is melting together is a trend that we've seen for some years. But I think lots of these trends, the use of artificial intelligence, the use of of blockchain technology, the way platforms are now offering even more personalized options to consumers, and they have become more powerful and successful over the last year. All these existing trends, I think, are going to speed up. Are speeding up at this point in time, of course, as they are fueled by the COVID. I think by the time we're entering the post COVID era, I think we will see that we will start off at a significantly different level of online behavior and consumer spending than we were at the beginning of the of COVID. So let's hope next year by January 1st, COVID has ended and we're all kind of back to normal. I think we will start off the post-corona era in retail at a significantly higher, different level than than where we were when we started this.
Yeah. And are there certain trends, like we name some, but do you think there's one that's like really going to be a focal point for these retailers that they're really going to have to shift gears and focus on?
Well, for one, I think the trend that we have to start using, not just the big players, but also small, medium enterprises, that we have to start using artificial intelligence. I think for a lot of small retailers, I think that's still something that's like far away. It's not touchable. It's just too expensive or whatever. But China shows us that artificial intelligence is also can help small and medium enterprises to go to the next level, to help them with inventory, to offer more personalized experiences to their customers. And I think so that trend will feed, so artificial intelligence will feed all kinds of other trends that we are seeing, whether it's far away kind of trends like the blockchain and voice technology. I just think about voice technology. I think voice will be the next revolution in retail, and definitely will be um, game changer for the second decennium that we're now starting into. And artificial intelligence, therefore, is not just something for the big players; it's also for the small players, and it's the fuel, it's the energizer for many other trends that we are already have seen emerging, and that I think will speed up exponentially in the next years.
Yeah, sounds like exciting times. All right, well, now we're going to move on to our next segment of our podcast. That is our social media moment. And during our social media moment, we like to read off an interesting tweet from another digital enterprise and just get your take on the matter. So, are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Social media moment.
So Yota, this is a web and mobile optimization services company, just tweeted the following. For many years, retailers have struggled to handle traffic spikes during peak online shopping periods. But due to the pandemic, these previously frustrating factors have very quickly become what will ultimately make or break digital brands.
So yeah, a question for you is what types of retailers, so what brands even, do you think are well positioned when it comes to the current circumstances? And what about the ones that are not well positioned? What can they do to get back in the game?
Well, I think, as I said before, the ones that have a good and well thought out online strategy, I think
Mm.
they're in a good position. The ones that do not have a web store or do not have other channels, Instagram, social media, whatever, to sell through, I think they're not so well positioned, to be very honest and frank. And every retailer has got to understand that every step of the customer journey needs to be thought through and thought out. They need to understand that customer. They need to understand a customer, understand how customers buy online. How is their what I call on-life behavior? On-life really reflects to the melting of online, offline within your own life. And we have to understand, and retailers have to understand that behavior is changing almost on not on a daily basis, but on a momentarily basis. So the way you select and pay online might be different now than in an hour from now.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to collect some stuff in store. Sometimes you want to try stuff on in store, but most often you don't want to do that. You want to start trying stuff on at home. You want to return things, or you don't want to return things. You want to return things in a store, or you want to return things through their post office. I mean, shopping is a multi-dimensional behavior, and which is really truly fueled by what I call new on-life behavior, where we really want it has to add something to our life. If online shopping and the way we do it, and the way it has been presented to us, adds something to our lives, then we are most likely willing to do so or to change our behavior because it makes our lives maybe a little easier or enjoyable or profitable or accessible or whatever. And I think so. Retailers should really look for that type of added value in the behavior of consumers, and those retailers are well positioned if you have thought this through, if you know what your customer want, if you understand how your customers feel. You almost have to step into the life of your customer, and if you do that, then you can follow your customer.
Yeah. And I think just to sort of bring, I mean, you mentioned it a bit already, but just to bring it, I guess, into more sort of shorter, tangible points. If we imagine, like, I'm a CEO of like a real retail company that's got both physical stores and a web shop. What advice then would you give me? What should I be doing now to better my chances of making it through this pandemic?
Yeah, it's just a little bit what I just said. You have to analyze your consumer and
Yeah.
know what they want and give it to them. Don't think like I've always done it this way, and heck, why shouldn't I keep doing it for the next years from now? And you have to follow your customer. If your customers are going to platforms, whether it's the big techs or niche platforms, it might be a good idea that you follow them because you have to be there where your customers are. But back to your own website, good product information, excellent hyper personalization, attractiveness of your website, navigation, seamless transition between online and offline. If you are a multi-channeler,
Yeah.
all of those things help and add to your presence. And but also, I think about like a local fashion store. I mean, if you're selling sustainable brands, you photograph everything, post it online. Think about delivery options, local delivery by bike or whatever. Think about your payment options, which channel to use
Yeah.
besides your own website. And like I also already said, invest in technology. Most of the times, all the smart technology is now available, not just only for the big players, but also for small and medium enterprises, and ultimately have excellent customer service and customer care in place. That would be my advice.
Interesting. Yeah, good stuff. So now that we've sort of, I guess, reflected it a bit, let's talk about some of the key trends that we think will emerge for retailers in this year, in 2021. What do you think is up next on the menu?
I think it's kind of fun question because I have to think after this COVID, what will happen in the next years to come, and
Yeah.
then I have to go back. I told you I'm working on a new book, and for this new book, I went back to about 100 years ago when we had another pandemic, the Spanish flu, and when we came out of that pandemic. So when we came out, when we left the Spanish flu behind us, we saw that people were very happy to finally exhale again and to feel a sense of relief. And I think the 20s, it was called the Roaring 20s, were really a time of great innovation, acceleration, even.
Yeah.
And I think I think we're at the brink of this new era. Maybe we're at the era of a new roaring 20s, where where data and AI will become accessible to all retailers, large and small. Sustainability, where consumers, I think, more and more will demand it, and driven by what we experience. We health to live a healthy life, I
Yeah.
think, speaks to everybody's mind at this point in time. We understand that local has a key place in our way of dealing with things in our daily lives. So local versus global retail is an issue and will become an issue. I think voice technology, as I mentioned before, will be part of this new decade of innovation. And of course, how to approach all of that as a retailer, I think it all depends on what kind of goods or services, of course, you deliver, and what is your branding, what is your position, etc. But ultimately, it has to boil down to making things easier, more accessible, more customer friendly, cheaper. In short, what truly matters to consumers.
Yeah, interesting and refreshing to hear a generally more positive outlook as
Oh
well.
yeah, absolutely.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, the other question I had down here, but I guess you kind of already answered it as well, was how do you predict organisations will actually then use these learnings for future successes? But yeah, of course, you touched upon the importance
Yeah.
of local, etc.
Um, I hope that organizations will study, will be open-minded to learn, will be able to think outside of the box. And if that's not a trait that you really have within yourself, then I would think surround yourself with the ones that do have that vision, that do have that outlook on how life might be changing and which direction, and learn from that. It's kind of easy to predict that platform economy will become more important than ever, and that smaller retailers will have to decide whether to add selling through platforms into the sales channels. If maybe a online retailer wants to open a physical store, yes or no? How to go about social media, Instagram shopping, etc. So I think. Um, and to what extent all of that is going to happen depends, of course, whether you have a local focus or a national focus, a more international focus, and of course, what kind of a retailer you are. But I think having an open mind to learnings and to of what others at this point in time are doing, and I think that's why it's good. I think this we have these kind of podcasts because I think that gives people a way to think about what's in store of them for now, but also for the next years. I think that's a good way of starting off that learning experience.
Yeah, cool, interesting.
Yeah, and if we can just backtrack a little, you mentioned platform economy. Is that synonymous with like online marketplaces, like the Amazons and the Bull.coms, or?
Yeah, it is. That's it's and I think the challenges are huge because the platform economy offers, of course, two sides. One is, of course, that it provides lots of opportunities for retailers, small and large, for brands to gain a new platform, to add new services to what you're already doing. And obviously, there's also some challenges that we have to go by. We have to see that we can work together closely together as a retailer or a brand with platforms, and we have to create a level playing field. We have some worries about all these platforms that come out of Asia. We want to make sure that they do understand that we play the game in Europe by certain rules, and I think it's important for legislators to understand that as well, and for authorities to really check out whether we're all playing the game by the same rules. And if that's not the case, then they will have to act. Yeah, but again, platforms are crucial. They're an integrated part of the way people shop. My prediction is that platforms will grow bigger and bigger. My prediction is also that we'll see lots of new smaller niche platforms, and that might be an opportunity for lots of local retailers. But yes, the platform economy and marketplace economy is a very much is a growing trend.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting how that moves forward, because I think it's also a bit trickier in terms of, monitoring customer experience or user experience on those
Absolutely.
platforms. Yeah,
Yeah,
with all the sellers and different
absolutely.
parties that are involved. Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much covers it for today. But before we go, we always like to give our guests a moment to share a little bit of, last minute advice that you can leave with our listeners. So, Wijnand, I'll give you the floor here. Are there any takeaways that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
No. I think be yourself. Believe in yourself. Think about your digital. To give a little advice. Think about your digital organization, because I think, and think about the people that you're working with or that are part of your team. I think digital knowledge and digital skills are crucially important, whether you're a online retailer or a physical retailer that wants to do stuff online. I think we often forget that retail is a game which is being done by people, and people need to want to learn, and people want to experience. So open up your organization. Think about not just about digital transformation, but think also about a digital organization where empower your people to do more. And I think if you can do that, I think you'll be among the winners of this coming decennium, where retail is changing and will be changing fast. And hopefully everybody who's listening will be part of that.
Yeah, that's great advice. We want to thank you again for your time and for joining us on the show today, Wijnand. It's been
Most
great
welcome.
having you.
Most welcome.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to talk.
All right. Well, that was it for today's podcast. Hopefully this has given all of our retail listeners a lot to think about when it comes to adapting to the current circumstances and, pulling ahead of your competitors. So thanks for joining. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and we're looking forward to bringing you much more exciting content here on 360 Digital. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in for a brand new episode next month.